Afternoon. Welcome back to the Battle Camp. We've got another conversation today. You'll probably recognize the face sat next to me, but before we talk to John Hathaway, how you doing, John? You all right?
Very well, thank you very much.
Good. All right. So before we talk to John, just a couple of little bits. So please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe, share, like, all of that good stuff. And obviously, if you don't really want to look at me while you're listening to me, you've got the option to go on a podcast platform and join in that way. So all of the links are in the description below. So John, look, man, first and foremost, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
Good.
So my health's really come back and kind of back in training as much as I can be really during this lockdown. So
all right, so I just want to set the table a little bit, right? Because the way I kind of the way I kind of remember the sport is kind of different phases, and the phases that I remember it in is what channel the UFC was broadcast on in the UK, right?
it's a good way
So,
to remember it.
so the first phase for me when I started watching it, it was on Bravo, and then it moved over to Setanta Sport, and then ESPN, and then BT Sport, where it's been for the last 4 or 5, 6 years, whatever it is. The reason why I'm saying all of this is in the Setanta Sport era, we didn't have that many British fighters in the UFC. And the ones that we did have, I'll just name a couple. Obviously, Michael Bisping. It was the era when Dan Hardy fought GSP for the belt. Paul
Yeah,
Daly was out knocking people out left, right, and centre until he fought Josh Koscheck. And in that era, personally, I didn't think that we would see a British champion out of that crop, because I felt like we kind of struggled when it came to the wrestling and grappling side of things. And
yeah,
then there was this young up and coming guy that went by the name of John Hathaway. That kind of thought, I kind of at the time thought, what, you were like, what, early 20s or something like that, and you were,
yeah. So yeah, I signed at 22. It was.
yeah, and you joined the organization. And like, I just want people to know, because obviously, you know, it's a few years back now, but at that time, John, you were like the shining light, almost like, for in my opinion anyway, like this guy's like our young up and the one out of the young up and coming guys. So you know, that's kind of, I just wanted to say that to you. That's not really a question.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, it's some really nice words. It is. Do you know what I mean? And I think. I mean, obviously, I had my things in my career, but I think we were so lucky, obviously, to see from that crop, like with Bisping taking the middleweight belt and stuff like that. So we were so lucky to kind of have a British champion,
Oh yeah,
in the UFC. So it was just fantastic era of MMA, almost in a way,
yeah,
to be
definitely. I
part
mean,
of as well. So I was always proud to be part of that kind of lot as well. So it was a great lot of
yeah,
fighters in that.
it was a different era, because I just want to kind of I mean, if people aren't aware, it wasn't an era where we had an event every other week. It was like
No,
you'd be lucky to get two in a month, but generally it was once a month, and not every month you'd have a numbered event, you know. And that's
I must
that.
say, it was that kind of thing where you. I mean, not that I stay up for them now as well, every so often, just not as religiously. I remember during this era, because it was once a month, you'd make sure that you'd clear your things on the Sunday so you could stay up on the Saturday night or early hours of Sunday morning to watch it and stuff. And it's just all the hype around it as well. It's just fantastic.
Yeah,
I said we had
definitely.
some amazing tough fighters as well back in those days. With like Terry Etim, Paul Taylor as well.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Obviously,
obviously.
you already mentioned. I mean, to be fair, the Rough House crew was always a crew I remember growing up and seeing, because the first fight I ever had, actually, no, sorry, it was the second fight I had, was at the Bracknell Leisure Centre, and Paul Daly was actually on it.
Oh
So I
really?
remember seeing, like, again, these were guys I was already kind of like looking up to and kind of wanting to do well with, like Jim Woolhead, Dan Hardy, Paul Daly. They were the kind of the Rough House crew,
And they had the was it I was gonna say Peter Andre, but obviously it was something on. He came in the
Andre Winner
that's
as
it.
well.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Great guy.
Yeah, he's from Leicester or something like
Incredible fight. Yeah, incredible fight. Great hands,
that.
strong athlete. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I mean, I still remember Team Trojan as well back in the day.
yeah. So that was that. They were kind of based in the Midlands, Nottingham, sort of. That was the
Yeah,
core.
yeah, they're not team way, I believe.
Yeah, all right. So look, I want to start here, right? So although we've been talking for about 5 minutes or whatever,
No worries.
where I wanted to start is, so I was looking at kind of your Wikipedia page, and I know that's not the best place to do any research, but I just wanted to remind myself when you last fought in the UFC, and I was surprised it was all the way back in 2014.
Yeah.
And the question is, like, you just like, maybe I was looking in the wrong places, but I genuinely did try to look, what is going on with John Hathaway? Where is he? What happened? So the floor is yours, mate. What happened after that fight in 2014?
No worries. So obviously, I had the Kim fight, and it was obviously a tough loss anyway. Anyway, kind of loss, especially like that. It's a tough one. But I had not a lot of trouble. I had a couple of troubles, but I had a bit of a flare up during the kind of camp and stuff like that. And basically, it was a too good opportunity not to take. So I kind of gritted for it, did the fight. Sadly, it didn't come out the way I wanted it to. And then I think it was probably like 6 months or so after that, I had the Gunnar Nelson fight signed.
Oh,
And again,
really?
during the camp in that, I think I was about 4 weeks out, and again I had to pull out because again I had a flare up, and this time it was just well, I guess I didn't want to put my body through doing that while having a flare up
When you say
of
flare
my
up, what?
ulcerative colitis. So basically, I suffer from ulcerative colitis, which is basically like Crohn's, but of the large bowel.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, yeah, it's kind of just takes it out of you a bit. Do you know what I mean? Because it's an autoimmune kind of disease. So like my own body would be attacking its bowel, so I'd have I guess we called like a flare up, where it'd be inflammation in my large intestine. So yeah, so I pulled up with that fight, and then I kind of, after having to pull out, having it in the Kim fight, pulling out the Gunner fight, and I think it was the third time, maybe the fourth time I've had to pull out of a competition because of it. And I always feel so bad, having to pull out, because the guy's been going through a hard training camp as well, and then like whether it be 4 weeks or so many weeks out, and then losing your opponent, you might not get another opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted to get it under control and kind of, I guess, fix it as much as I could. So then I just basically took time out, went through the process of going through the kind of different medicines and stuff like that to try stop it, basically.
And then we're going. So the Gunnar Nelson fight would have been kind of offered to you in what, 2015, late 2014?
Yeah.
Okay. And then so you had a flare up with the Gunnar Nelson fight, and then did you get another offer for a different fight after the Gunnar Nelson fight, or?
No, I didn't. I basically stopped and basically just started going through the kind of medical procedures to kind of stop this. And the medical procedures for this, I was always on, my normal thing would be a medicine called mesalazine, which is basically just a pill where you take like 2 to 4 a day, and it kind of is meant to stop inflammation in your large bowel. When I'd have a flare up, I'd have to go on to something called prednisolone, which is kind of an anti-inflammatory steroid.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how severe the case was, I'd either have to go into hospital and have it via IV, or just take it orally. So I believe it is a banned substance in competition as well, but out of competition, it's kind of okay. But again, it's not an anabolic agent; it's just a kind of anti-inflammatory one. But it would kind of mess up your body a bit, especially with kind of especially when you're competing. Everything's got to be like so right to make sure your weight's on and this and the other. So taking something like that definitely doesn't help the situation. But after the Gunner fight, I went through basically immune suppressant drugs to stop my body from kind of trying to correct itself and attack itself.
Right.
And they were just a bit of a ball ache, really, and a bit pain in the backside, because some of them you'd have like adverse effects to it. Sometimes you'd I remember 1 or 2 of them I'd being sick on them for a couple of days, and then obviously you'd stop them, kind of recover, and you'd either, I think one of them I end up having to take another medicine to try counteract the sickness and try make myself not sick while taking it.
Oh man. And so that kind of just going through different medications, trying to find out what kind of balance of medication works for you, not just to, carry on with your fighting career, but just to have a comfortable, normal life. Like, how long did that process take?
I mean, it took years, probably like 4 to 6 years, because the odd thing with them is all of them you end up taking it, and then say you don't have a flare up, and then 6 months down the line you're like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I'm kind of, although I may feel like a bit unwell with it, you kind of like, at least it stopped my my UC and the flare ups. But then you'd have another flare up, and then they'd move you on to the next medication. And I kind of went through them, and I went on to a next set, which is the biologicals, which basically is, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's done through a IV.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have to drive, like, I think it's about 45 minutes away, sit there for an hour having an IV, then sit there for an hour after that to make sure I had no adverse effects to it. And they were actually working quite well, but they'd be every 8 weeks, and I'd feel great for say 6 weeks, and then the last 2 weeks I'd start really feeling kind of a bit I guess rundown would be a good way of saying it, or a bit kind of like under the weather. And then I'd have my next infusion. I'd feel good for like 2 months. And again, that went for the same pattern where you do like 2 to 6 months on one of them, you're feeling good, then you have a flare up, and I either have to go back onto the oral like anti-inflammatory steroids, or I have to go into hospital to have IVs, and then I'm back out, and then I try a different kind of medication. So kind of that just, I mean, that there, I said it was really weird because, I mean, that was like 4 to 6 years of my life. I can't actually remember when I was on which ones, but that time just kind of like went in a blur of just being okay for a month, not being good for a couple of weeks, being okay for a couple of months, not being good. And then I think it's just over 2 years ago, I actually, again, went for kind of a bit of a bad year where I was in that hospital like every couple of weeks having to go on IVs because like the anti-inflammatory steroid, like the pill form wasn't enough. And always you have to come down gradually on these. So you would start on say it'd be 8 tablets of it, and then you drop it down every week to like 7. And kind of every time I dropped down to about 6 tablets, after about 2 weeks again out of hospital, I'd flare back up again. I'd go back into hospital for like a week where I'd be on kind of IVs and stuff like that, and then back out. So that was the pattern for almost a year. And then basically I had to go in for surgery. So I had my large bowel removed.
Oh shit. So that was last year.
So that was 2 years ago now. So I've been 2 years without a bowel. Like, a lot, yeah, you don't realize how much the large bowel does until you don't have one. So it's such an odd thing to kind of like,
you miss it when it's gone, eh?
yeah, you only miss what you got. So it's such a weird thing to kind of miss. I mean, I got the plus side. I think I'm probably like 2 kilos lighter because it's about 2 kilos of flesh they took out of me. But I mean, that was just a weird experience. Obviously, like originally I was going to have it done through the NHS, and I was in hospital waiting for it, and it was kind of like where it's not like I guess an emergency procedure. Like it would be scheduled for the Saturday, and then if anything came in on the Saturday, that like my one would bump back a week, and that happened like once or twice. And then I was lucky that I managed to get down the private route, so I actually managed to get it done privately, which was just really nice because again, I had 3 procedures done in 8 months. When I think on the NHS, it'd probably be stretched over like I still probably wouldn't have had all of them, so it would have been done over like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, and the food's better
So
as well.
yeah. So yeah, you actually get some decent meals. So let's say for coming down in weight, both these things kind of go hand in hand. So it's fine, NHS food, and then having a bowel disorder, you kind of drop your weight down lots. So that's always handy.
So
I mean,
so go on.
No, I was just saying I had like a stoma for 6 months, 6 to 8 months. So yeah, 8 months. Sorry, it would have been. So I mean, that's another interesting one. Having a bit of your bowel kind of like sticking out of your stomach lining.
Yeah. And then is that not, do you not have a stoma anymore?
So no, all back internal. So it's such I mean, medical science is just crazy. Obviously, they basically used my small intestine to make an internal pouch, which again, so initially they just got rid of the large bowel because I mean, the doctor said like it was pretty much all of it was fairly ruined and scarred up, and generally looked like it could kind of like, I guess, tear at any time. And again, if you kind of tear, it's a different type of operation because I managed to get it done keyhole. Rather than if there was a tear, they'd obviously just cut me open from like top to bottom, and that would have caused a lot more problems. Although I've got like 8 little holes in my abdominal wall, which is obviously cases where you could have hernias in these positions. Obviously, if I'd just been cut from top to bottom, it would have been a kind of completely different situation.
Oh man, so in that whole period, like we're talking, like you said, 4, 5, 6 years or whatever. You were a professional fighter. That's all you did in terms of career. So what did you do in that period to just make ends meet and just have a bit of money in your pocket?
I started teaching down actually my old trainer, my first trainer, Sol Gilbert, runs an underground gym, which is down a good gym on the south coast. So I started basically just teaching twice a week down there. Again, every so often I'd have to have a week out when I went to hospital, but other than that, teaching now and kind of, I guess, learning how to teach properly, because it's such a, I mean, this is what I do nowadays. Me and my wife run a gym in the kind of Stenning area, so it's a combat, and she does CrossFit, so it's CrossFit and combat gym. And I think learning to teach was such a good thing because it's something I'd already done a fair bit up at Shoot Fighters and stuff, and already done, I guess, just trying to help out friends and stuff like that, learn combat. But you have a set way of doing it, but there's multiple ways of teaching someone, which is that interesting. And again, you're always going to have different instructors, which you're going to learn better off. But it's being able to teach in, I guess, multiple different ways on different ways what people learn.
Being able to connect with each student on a level that suits them.
Like on how are they going to be able to pick this up? I was always, again, generally for me growing up, I was always like a visual learner. So if I could watch it, you only had to watch it once or twice, and then I could more than likely do it. I mean, I was learning most of my arm bars. I mean, you were talking about actually when I started watching first UFC, and it was like UFC Unleashed, and they were shown on like Sky Sports, and it was just compilations of like UFC fights. And I'd just see it and I'd be like, amazing. I'd watch it enough time, like I'd record it, watch it enough times, and I'd go and try like do arm bars and triangles and stuff like that. So yeah, for me, visual learning. And yeah, you got to be able to do it, I guess, teach multiple different ways the same thing.
So that's what you're doing now. You're focusing on coach. So do you just do coach MMA holistically, or do you focus on certain kind of aspects or disciplines within the sport?
Yeah, so we run classes where we do 2 MMA classes a week, and then we generally do 2 wrestling classes, a couple different jiu-jitsu classes. Generally, the ground jiu-jitsu is generally one of the most popular kind of in the area. And then we'll do striking classes as well, a couple striking classes a week.
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, a little bit of everything. I like to break up. I don't think there's enough kind of wrestling in England as well. So I love kind of teaching the wrestling. It's always been one of my favorite things to do. So
yeah, and then that's what that kind of nicely brings us back to what I started this conversation with, because
right.
that was a strength that you had that we hadn't really seen from British fighters in that era anyway,
Yeah.
So let me actually just go back a little while before we go back. So how
No
are
worries.
you physically now? Like, are you happy, healthy, kind of?
Yeah, happy and healthy again. Like live a different life without a large belt, but I'm been trying to push myself more and more into training. I think for me, where I've been unconditioned for 6-7 years or whatever, it's just building my body back to conditions. So I can do hard sessions. It's just getting my body back to the point where I can do multiple hard sessions in a week or in a day, so to say, to be able to kind of get back to the position where I could possibly compete again or do something,
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because yeah, like, I'm a fat shit, right? I'm not an athlete by any stretch of the imagination, but like I recently in the summer during lockdown I started cycling, and it took me like initially doing 15 kilometers in a day was a big ask, and then I worked up to cycling. I live in West London, went to Windsor and back, and that was like a 60-kilometer cycle the whole day and that. But yeah, you got to build yourself up, and obviously if you've had a big physical change in the way you have, you've got to change your approach a little bit, I suppose. So let me just go back a little bit then. So you mentioned about when you first started kind of getting involved in the sport. So what's your first memory of watching or seeing or being involved in a martial art?
I guess my first memory is me and my oldest brother watched it on Sky Sports, and it was their Unleashed program where there was multiple different fights. And I always remember it because it was it's still one of my favorites, I guess. Fighters BJ Penn versus Dean Thomas. And it was just a great fight. Do you know what I mean? I just remember I think he got finished by BJ Penn hit him with I think it was a right knee. It was a little collar tie right knee, and it was just a great kind of finish. And yeah, it was just my first memory. And then from there, I ended up buying, I think from like, I want to say there was some type of Karate or Black Belt magazine. I managed to get the Black Panther VHSs of Bas Rutten's How to Do like Pancrase and Mark Kerr's like videos.
Did you know who they were at that time, Bas Rutten and Mark Kerr?
No. They were the only ones which basically had like MMA, because it was I tell some of the students this because it's so weird nowadays, because you can just watch anything nowadays on YouTube, and like who's Bas Rutten, boom, put it in, and you get it. I remember, I'm pretty sure I was still on like, I don't know, some kind of like BT phone with no real screen on it, and just everything was different back then. You didn't have that kind of thing, you couldn't find out who these people were, but they're the only ones doing MMA in these magazines. So I was like, oh, I'll buy these VHSs, got made for my birthday or something like that when I was 15, and just started from there.
I got into the sport a little bit later than you, because it was kind of, I think the VHS era was kind of coming to the end, and it was actually a thing at this point. And I just remember spending hours just like going through Wikipedia pages or just pages or bios on Sherdog of fighters and saying, oh shit, he fought him. What's Pride? I didn't know what Pride was. Do you know what I mean?
Sherdog was incredible back in the day. Do you know what I mean? So much of the information was through Sherdog. It was just the best. So I remember my first website, I used to do this during my IT class when I was at school. So I was like 15. And the only website I knew that had techniques on it was bjj.org. And I used to just go down there, and basically it was all pictures and written descriptions, no videos at this time. And it was like slow internet. So every page took like 5 minutes to load up. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what I did during my IT classes, was just go through and look at moves and be like, oh, that's the collar choke. Oh, that's this, And I still remember when Waleed Ismail collar choked, or clock choked, sorry, Hoist Gracie in a gi as well.
Right.
So again, most of all the BJJ, like this website is going on, were all gi stuff. So you just look at gi. There wasn't people doing really like no gi instructionals. I think Mario Sperry probably did one back in the day.
Mhm.
But yeah, so it's just you just have to look at gi stuff and be like, oh, okay, like that's this trick. I'll try to in a no gi situation or something.
Yeah. So just so obviously you were a fan of the sport, but I assume that's before you stepped foot in a gym. So
Yeah,
I just remember hearing or knowing that you were like really good at rugby as well or something. And I don't know whether that's
yeah,
just
no,
Rogan saying it on commentary or
yeah,
what. But how did that
yeah. So
happen?
I mean, I always just played rugby since I was a kid. Basically, my oldest brother played rugby, so I got two older brothers, and we all just played rugby. So I got
What
to a
level did
fairly
you play
high
at?
level. I got into Harlequins Academy, and I was going to go down to the Bristol Academy, but this was just so I was going to move down to Bristol. I kind of was falling out of love in rugby and falling in love with kind of combat sports rather than doing the rugby.
So you
So I
were
mean, I was
what,
probably
16?
undersized compared to other people as well in rugby nowadays.
Oh, yeah, nowadays, yeah. But well, back then, how old were you at that time?
Even back then, so I was probably 17 then when I was going to do that, 17, 18. Because
Mm,
it was just, I had my first fight when I was 18. I had two just before I turned 19. It was, so even back
okay.
then, I mean, this is what makes it, I was speaking to someone else about this the other day. It made me laugh so much because like there's a whole amateur scene now, which you can do, and you could be an amateur champion and this, that, and the other. And my amateur days was I think we had like Sol Gilbert at ZT Fight School held like two interclub like tournaments, I guess, all on one day.
Mhm.
He just went in, we fought in like the kind of cage we had then, and that was my amateur career, I guess.
And
So I don't even know how
were
many
you
fights
wearing
it was.
pads
It was like
and stuff like
eight
that,
fights.
like
Yeah,
headgear?
so you had shin guards on, didn't have headgear on, and then you just
Mm.
had the bigger gloves on. But
And
I mean, it was just what it was. It wasn't on a show or anything like that.
yeah.
It was just in the gym
Well,
with
that's
people
that's
watching.
that's
So
that's what the sport was kind of. I don't want to say the sport was in its infancy, but it kind of, if you in the grand scheme of things, like the sport itself is like what, when I say the sport, mixed martial arts, because obviously martial arts have been around for forever, but
right,
mixed martial arts, what, 30 years, if that? Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So
if that.
yeah.
I mean, when I was doing these tournaments, there were still people say turning up to them, which were like I don't know, like a Wing Chun guy, or you still had that weird like almost UFC one era kind of stuff where like someone would be like, oh, he does karate, and he's coming
Uh.
in to do like this MMA kind of amateur tournament. So
Yeah, yeah. By this time now, you know, you've had the option: am I going to play rugby or am I going to pursue a career? Well, let me ask you this. So at that point, did you think this could be a career in combat sports, or was it just a passion that you just thought I got to follow this?
I think almost for one I saw. I mean, when I was 15 watching it and stuff, and kind of wanted to do it. You know, I wanted to be in UFC and I wanted to be in Pride. You know, whether I end up doing it or not, whether I was going to go for the rugby, because again, I still like doing rugby at that kind of on it. I still like playing rugby now anyway. If I played rugby, but it was definitely something I wanted to do and be good at.
Mhm. Okay, all right. So, so you've had a couple of amateur fights. So actually, before I talk about that, so your actual training. So you know you've spoken about kind of picking up little bits and pieces off the internet and VHS tapes and stuff like that. When did you get a chance to start putting that into practice, and what areas did you focus on in terms of different disciplines initially?
Probably when I was 16, I said start going over to ZT Fight School, which is Sol Gilbert's place. It was the only gym in the area, I'm pretty sure. I mean, every so often we'd have people like Brian Adams, who's Gym 01 now. We had Tom Watson and some of his guys come down because I think they were just training in a place down Southampton way, I think he is.
Yep.
And just started training there. And Jack McGee, who is a jiu-jitsu black belt, he was my first, I guess, instructor for MMA and everything else. And he was doing MMA at the time. And
Hmm.
yeah, just jumped in and kind of just started to, like, trying to learn as much as I could, really.
Cool. So it was just like you didn't have, you know, some fighters come in and they just start off doing, I don't know, kickboxing, and then they then pick up other disciplines. You just kind of, you knew
Oh
you
yeah,
must have thought of
I
MMA.
knew I wanted to do MMA, so I was going in to try learn just everything basically,
So
and I
you're
knew everything had to be done as a whole rather than individuals.
so it's actually quite funny because I remember like Rory McDonald when he came along, and he was, you know, GSP's kind of, or not for us,
Right.
hobbies protege, GSP's kind of younger part of that same gym. And one of the things that I remember Joe Rogan saying in commentary is, "Oh, this is the new wave of fighter that are coming
Right.
training MMA, and they're not from a specific discipline. So you're from that. You're the
Yeah.
first
So I was like
generation.
just on the cusp of that.
Yeah. So you're
Like people like me and Rory were the
yeah.
ones, coming in, not coming in from a particular martial art background, just seeing it would have been UFC or Pride FC, and just being like, this is kind of what I want to do.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. So yeah, you're literally right at the beginning of that phase then.
Right.
So you fought for some British and UK kind of organizations. What is it, Cage Warriors and stuff like that? Let me have a look.
No, never fought for Cage Warriors. I had one fight on Cage Rage before it went under, and then UCMA. I mean, UCMA, or what's it called now? David Donald's show basically is in the Truxie, but all the contenders, it would be Cage Rage contenders I fought on lows, and they were always in the Truxie. So I want to say I had like 4 or 5 fights on contenders, and that was a great show.
That
show. Great little kind of
on Sky Sports, and he used to be sat there presenting it with that metal fence behind him and on a sofa. Yeah. Sometimes I have 2 beds.
But I said that atmosphere in it's perfect. And there's certain atmospheres you get in certain places which are just like, I guess, like Coliseum, like where it just all kind of like funnels into where the competitors are and stuff. So you get real cool atmospheres in them places.
Yeah, I've been to a white collar boxing match in the Truxie, so I know exactly. I mean, it was different because, well, actually in them days, MMA they probably had like a few round like tables as well.
A couple of tables on top, but I mean, like always the best seating was always kind of up top, really, because you could look down on it and see it properly.
My fucking screen's gone.
Right, no worries.
Let's carry on. That's never happened before. Never mind. All right. So when did you get the call for the UFC?
I think I say it was when I was 22. It would have been just turned 22. So I just had my first Cage Rage fight, and I think I just got back. I want to say a trip to American Top Team. It would have been. So I went out and did 2 trips in America when I was younger. I did a month over at Legends Gym, which was the 10th Planet Gym at the time. Okay. So I got to meet Eddie, Joe Rogan, and I trained extensively with Dan Hardy. Funnily enough,
how did you organize that?
Just me and a friend, Mark Adams, just went out. So Brian Adams' top guy was Mark Adams, again, great fighter as well. And he wanted to go out. He wanted someone to go out with. I just went with it. So we just kind of went and stayed in some hostels just off Hollywood Boulevard, and just walked to the gym and start training.
Just the hunger to train. Yeah. So that was the first. So did you know, like, obviously you knew who Eddie Bravo was, but were you kind of in awe of Eddie Bravo at that time?
I mean, Mark knew him a lot more than me, but I was just in awe, I guess, like when you got there, the level of people you were training with, like Scott Epstein was the main trainer there when Eddie was away for like UFCs and stuff. Conor Ewan was a really good wrestler, and I was training with him, and obviously Dan Hardy I'd kind of known from the Rap House days. So it was just amazing to get over with those guys and be training with them.
Yeah, you're still smiling a lot thinking about it now, all these years later.
It was great, it was a great time.
So how did the UFC? So actually, before we talk about UFC, so when did you make that move over to London Shoot Fighters then?
When I got the UFC contract.
Okay, all right. So how did that happen? They contact you, Jim? You get a call on your
so I think they contacted Sol either through Alexi or Sol, and basically Sol knew I'd need to kind of like up my training and the level of people I was training with. So he spoke to Alexis because he again was a London Shoot Fighter, and then I had to go up to London Shoot Fighters a couple of times a week and just kind of prepared. And I think originally I was only up there 2 or 3 times a week just to make sure I was in good shape and kind of competing with the level where I needed to be able to compete with the UFC.
Okay, and then so the first event you fought at was in Dublin.
Yeah.
So obviously it wasn't I don't want to say the full UFC experience, but the experience of going over to the States and fighting in America in a big, Vegas or whatever it is. So was it a different set of nerves for you fighting under the UFC ban as opposed to Cage Rage in the Troxy? Like,
no, I mean, for me, it was always kind of competitions. A fight is a fight. It didn't matter where it was. You'd have almost the same nerves if you're doing it in the gym or wherever. I mean, I never minded doing it in a stadium or doing it in front of no one. It was kind of like the thrill of the competition, really, and the wanting to win, rather than having to do it for fans. As much as it is nice to do it for fans and get people enjoying what you do,
And let me just ask you a question a little bit kind of off topic a little bit. So like, when it comes to fighters in combat sports, professional fighters, the kind of general kind of story of, fighters is, usually it's, someone from a certain type of background, low income. He's had it hard his whole life, and you know, he had to fight his way out, and the struggle and all of that stuff. And you come across as a gentle. Your nickname was the gentleman, so you come across as a bloke that's kind of, you know, just from a nice, comfortable kind of surrounding. What kind of drew you towards a life in combat sport?
I don't know, I just enjoyed it, just loved it. As I say, it's the thrill of the competition, the
Mm,
desire to kind of win was always just was just good. The test of you just testing yourself against one other person. So coming from a rugby background, it's always a team sport. So
mm,
I mean, you win and lose a team. We had years where we played terrible and years where we played great, but
mm.
it's always the same, you know, it was a team. So yeah, I just loved competing really.
Okay, fair enough. So let's go back to Dublin then. So you're fighting. You make your debut in the UFC. Was there anything that was like totally different, or something that you were like, fuck, I've made it? Do you know what I mean? Like, what was it? Was there, or maybe there wasn't? Like, what was the feeling of making you? Because that was your dream,
I
right?
guess,
UFC or Pride when you first, you know, set off on this
but
journey.
funny enough, initially it was I'd always wanted to be UFC, maybe get UFC championship and then go to Pride. But I kind of like, it's Pride for me back in the day, I think just because it was just more crazy and brutal and like everyone was bigger and just the way the show was kind of put together. But I mean, UFC is just where it's at. They had the best fight, especially at that time,
Mhm.
the best fighters in the world.
Yeah.
But I mean, the weird thing I think was the thing was the hardest for that first fight was the fact that because we were both the youngest guys at the time competing, and Tom Egan, who I competed against, was an Irish guy. We were
Yeah.
both like at the press conference, so it was like one of the ones where like I'd seen press conferences, but I'd never experienced them. So it was like that was a bit of a shock, I guess, being in the press conference and not really knowing what to do really in that situation, you know.
Did you get asked a question though?
I did. I remember at some point, I always feel like you know, the movie Talladega Nights. I felt like Ricky Bobby, where you just like just didn't know what to do with my hands. Really, I don't know what to say or do anything. You like deer in the headlights and being like, But I mean, to be fair, everyone was super nice there. They asking the questions. You just got to ask the questions. But I mean, it was a hell of an experience that was.
Okay, so obviously, so you beat Tom Egan, and then your next fight, Rick Story, UFC 99. So Rick Story obviously is a guy that kind of, he had a lot of hype around his name. Let's be honest,
Mhm.
and you beat him. So tell me about that experience. So UFC 99, obviously that was a numbered event as well. So I was looking at some of these cards that you fought on and some of the people that headlined them. So this one, for example, you had Franklin against Wanderlei Silva as the main event. Cain Velasquez against Czech Congo. Like some real.
I'd say the big fight on that night was Cain Velasquez versus Czech Congo.
Mm-mm-mm.
Compared to, I mean, like as much as I guess the Franklin Wanderlei Silva fight was a great one, that the Congo Velasquez fight was definitely the biggest, you know, the best
Yeah.
one on that card. So
Yeah, well, that fight was because Congo was on a bit of a run, and
right.
Cain Velasquez was this wrecking machine, and it was like, will Congo be able to deal with the wrestler? And clearly, he
I
wasn't.
mean, it was the fact that like I think Congo basically dropped him
Mm,
every round,
yeah,
like at the beginning, like right at the beginning, and God knows how, but Velasquez always managed to basically survive
yeah,
and then get the takedown and then like do ground and pound and kind of
pummel.
win the round
Yeah,
basically. And you'd almost score it always like whatever with a knockdown, it'd be like a 10-8 round, so to say. But because he always got the takedown afterwards, after being knocked down
mm,
and beating on him, like he won the round each time.
mm,
So
mm.
just an incredible fight that one was.
So just for you personally, the Rick Story fight, like, did you know who he was, or did he have that hype around him at the time?
I mean, I just knew he was a very good wrestler. I think he was NCAA Division One wrestler. He was,
Mm,
so I knew bits about him. Kind of, we were lucky being at Shoot Fighters where they had such great wrestlers. We had a lot of good high level European kind of wrestlers, and it's a slightly different style to the kind of American style, but
mhm.
it's wrestling's wrestling. You know, I could always get someone good in on my legs or on my body, and yeah, I mean, still today. I mean, I've lost 2 fights, but that was still probably my toughest fight or my most enjoyable tough fight. You know, it was a real back and forth. It was a dog fight. It was a scrap.
Mm.
You know, for a lot of it, and yeah, it was just an absolute pleasure to fight Rick, and it was great. It was down in Cologne, it was as well. So
Yeah.
just a great experience.
Yeah, so that was again another European event. So
Right.
that just goes back to what we were saying before, because nowadays it's very rare to get a numbered event in Europe. Do you know what I mean? But in them,
Right.
you'd have numbered events in
Right.
different countries and that.
I mean, look at that. What number did you say that was, like 98 or something like that?
99.
No. So that's just crazy. Although, I mean, think of what number we're on now, and all the other kind of like fight nights where we have it. It's just madness fighting back in the day.
Yeah. So the one that I really want to talk to you about is the Sanchez fight, because Diego Sanchez, he's the guy that was kind of he jumped from lightweight to welterweight and then back down to lightweight, and he was a bit of a kind of in-betweener, but also he was also
Right.
a guy that was highly experienced, and he was a name in the sport at the time, and he's not the same Diego Sanchez we see these days. I think that was the era when he'd come out just shouting yes repeatedly. I think
Yeah.
that.
I mean, back in the day, I watched him all through the tough house. And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Season 1 of the tough house, and he fought middleweight. He fought Kenny Florian at middleweight, which is
yeah,
great to think Kenny was at middleweight.
yeah.
But yeah, and then he was at welterweight for quite a few years, fighting really well, top level competition. Went down to lightweight, had a good run, fought BJ Penn at lightweight, and then lost to Penn in the title fight, and moved back up.
Mm. So when you get the call, Diego Sanchez, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking?
Not much. I was actually out in Florida at the time. My friend Maris Romskis was fighting Nick Diaz. So
Mm.
just for that fight happened, the coach told me about it when he came out for the fight. He just got the information that we could have that fight. So I kind of jumped on it. You know, Diego was someone I loved watching growing up. So he was incredibly exciting, and I just thought it was a great fight.
And
So again,
then
another southpaw. So I was two southpaws on the trot as well. So I'd had Rick Sawyer as a southpaw, and then he was a southpaw. So it's
yeah,
kind of nice keeping, I guess, that pattern if you're going to do it rather than going back to an orthodox and then come back to a southpaw. So
and then obviously you came out victorious in that fight. What did it feel like when the decision was read and you'd won that fight?
it felt great. I mean, it was a great experience. It was the first one I had a good friend over for that one called Eric Bradley, who again was a big time top 10 champion in freestyle wrestling in the States. And yeah, so I think I was just very well prepared for that fight. Everything kind of went the way the training camp had gone, and it was just perfect fight. It was the first fight in Vegas as well, which is a great place to compete, and obviously it's the kind of capital of the fight world, really, in a way.
Yeah, well, I mean the main event for that card was Rashad Evans against Quentin Rampage Jackson, and they just come off
Right,
their being coaches of Tough, and I think that was the Kimbo
right.
Slice season. That was the season they were the
It
coaches.
was,
So that was probably
yeah,
one of the most kind of popular seasons of that show. And you're on that card. You're kicking off. You're on the main card of a pay-per-view show, and this card had Michael Bisping against Dan Miller was on this
right,
card, and Dan Miller came out on that big bloody boombox or whatever it was on his shoulder. Like it was a
yeah,
different time in it where fighters were allowed to express themselves and they could wear what they wanted
right.
on the way to the octagon and stuff like that. So that's a big bloody fight for you to get and for you to win. Like it must have something inside must have felt like fuck, look what I've achieved. Like, do you know what I mean? Or was it just like another day in the office for you?
Uh, I guess kind of like another. I mean, it was on the road to where I wanted to go. So yeah, it was great to win that fight.
Mm.
Thoroughly enjoyable. Again, I had the whole Vegas experience. Everything was just, I guess, the way I imagined it.
Mm.
So it
So
just went
obviously,
well.
yeah. So this is different now because all your previous fights in the UFC have been in Europe, and now your first time fighting in
Yeah.
Vegas in a big pay-per-view event. What was that experience like compared to fighting in Europe, like during fight week or trying to make
It's
weight?
amazing. I mean, I was incredible lucky. But the other thing, yeah, you're in fight week. I mean, making weight was not too hard. Again, it's America, so you can kind of get the food and stuff what you need to get. I went out a couple of days early anyway, so I was in the MGM early, and then I guess I got to circle it all in. I was on the strip. You could go up and down the strip, kind of get the atmosphere. The nice thing about obviously Vegas is fight week's a big thing over there, so you kind of see people in the build up. Everyone's kind of like the city gets bigger and bigger as it starts to get towards Saturday.
Yeah.
Obviously, another real lucky thing for me was I knew I was, I think, the first fight on the live show. So they're always the nicest things to do because you know exactly when you're going to start.
Oh yeah, that's a good
You know, the
point.
live show is going to start say 9, and boom,
Mm.
you're on. You know what time you're going to start. Rather than obviously when you're kind of waiting, or if you're a swing bout, you're kind of waiting for something to happen, waiting for your slot to be ready. Rather than I knew exactly how to kind of start getting warmed up. So I mean, you couldn't ask for a better one really for your first fight abroad.
Yeah, I suppose you can do everything with purpose because this is the time I'm starting, rather than kind of
Yeah.
half-heartedly doing it, thinking, "Am I actually going to go out?" At
Yeah,
this?
being like, sure, how hard do I need to warm up
Yeah,
now? Do I need to get swell, or am I going to cool down and stuff?
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So did you meet Dana White at that point? Like, what like is there kind of an experience that you can kind of recall to say, "Oh shit, yeah, I remember that." Do you like or a
Uh,
memory from UFC 114?
no, I mean, I guess, but one of my memories is always we were kind of going in for the weigh-in. We're all in line, obviously waiting to go out and get weighed in. And
Mm.
I've got Diego Sanchez just behind me, like bouncing up and down, kind of being really extreme. And you're just like, oh my god,
And you're
I
what,
got Diego behind me.
23 or something at the time, 22?
Yeah, 23, 24 or something like that. So
And you got the most
yeah,
eccentric guy in the sport right behind you.
yeah, literally like as hyped, because he's always hyped. Do you know what I mean? So he's
Yeah.
hyped. He's bouncing around behind me. And you're just like, Jesus.
What was he? Did he say anything to you?
I can't fully remember. He was probably shouting yes, but I can't fully remember, to be honest.
That yes, I love that. Like when
It
I
was a
first
great,
saw
great
it,
little
yeah.
thing.
Like I don't know where it came from, but blimey, that was
No,
some.
I always remember him again doing the kind of cartwheels just down the hill, just shouting yes. But I mean, yeah, credit to him, he's still competing as well, and he's just he was an incredible fighter. He was.
Yeah, I mean, I saw even now that he like someone posted a fighter kind of when nowadays obviously it's all different, so we'll have to fly from the same airport in Vegas to go to Fight Island or
Yeah,
wherever it is, and he was just there kind of in the waiting area doing all sorts of like he's got this new coach. I don't know what a holistic coach.
yeah. I don't know much about him, but yeah,
Yeah, they were doing some sort of yoga stroke movement, some weird stuff basically, just in the way like. But I'm just trying to. That's just Diego Sanchez, isn't it? Like that. He just does
uh,
what he wants when he wants. So let's look at UFC 120 because this was a sad event for me personally as a fan from England, obviously, because that was an event where we had our kind of premier kind of British fighters fighting. You had Dan Hardy against Carlos Condit. You had yourself against Mike Pyle, and then Michael Bisping headlined against Sexy Yama. Remember?
Sexy Yama, yeah. But
Yeah,
he got the win though. That was
yeah,
a great fight for Mike.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he was the only one, have the big fights that pulled through.
Yeah. So that was your first defeat. Like what? And I
Mhm.
remember watching that fight, and obviously I haven't seen it since. And we're talking, I can't even remember what year this is, but this is years ago. And I remember watching it and just watching that fight, and it just felt like Mike Powell was just too experienced for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I
I
mean, yeah,
don't.
living nightmare where you're just that's one step behind on
Yeah,
everything it
it's like he
seems, and
could
just
see
like,
he just knew what you were gonna do, so he was
right.
already like. What was your memory of that fight?
Again, just a bad night. I think with always watching Mike Powell and stuff like that, I think I didn't. You need to start hard with him, in a hindsight kind of thing, like 2020 hindsight. With Mike on the fights, what he loses, it's just because the guy goes out there and kind of like sticks it on him real hard, and he kind of like backs up and then gets finished that way. Rather than he just started building momentum,
Mm.
and then it was just impossible to stop him. I say he's an incredibly experienced fighter, and yeah, a lovely fella as well. I've met him a couple of times now, and he's a great guy. But yeah, just kind of experienced and just horribly had a terrible night. Not my worst night, but a terrible night where everything's just slowly snowballing out of control.
Did he have a mullet when he fought you?
No, I think he was shaved hair. I'm pretty sure.
All right, because he did grow a mullet at one point, and I think that would have
I
made
mean,
it
I'm
worse.
I'm
It
all
made
fan of a mullet, man. There's nothing wrong with a mullet.
So from then, so like the next day you wake up, it's your first defeat. What you look at yourself in the mirror, you're brushing your teeth. What's going through your mind? Are you down in the dumps, or are you thinking, "Fucking look, I got to change this"? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what's going through your mind?
I guess I probably was down in the dumps for a couple of days on that one, but I mean, other than that, yeah, you just kind of got to pick yourself back up and try get back on and get training again.
Mm, mm. And that's, I suppose, you did just get back on the horse and get cracking. So at this point, are you suffering from your illnesses that you described in the beginning of our conversation, or where are you?
No, I wasn't actually at this point. I'm trying to think when that first started. Do you know what? The first one I had was I was meant to fight Matt Brown, and again that would have been an incredible fight
Fucking
because
hell,
I've
Matt
just watched
Brown.
him obviously a little while ago against him versus Condit, which was kind of like that. That fight had that nostalgia. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it was only 2-3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago maybe.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
you see that fight on the card, you're like, oh, amazing! This is like a back in the day kind of fight, and it was exciting to watch. It brought back a lot of memories to seeing those two. And I was meant to compete against him, I think, in England, and it was like one of the really weird things where I went for like a month where basically I was kind of like passing blood in my sores, and
Mm.
kind of like you got psych on, you don't really know what it is. You just keep training and stuff like that. And a month went past, and I think, where's it? Is it when you don't have enough blood in it, or when you've not got enough iron, you go like, is it anemic? Is it? I think I
Yeah,
basically was
yeah.
like not doing very well. Everything was just getting worse and worse for me as the month goes on. I remember doing like, I was like, I don't gonna need to go to hospital. And Alexa's okay, but like we got someone sparring today, so someone's coming in to spar, like a good stand-up guy. So I did my sparring with him, did actually all right, funny enough. When you look back at these things, you're like, I can't believe I was still doing all the things I was training wise, and still training all right with I guess I had something in mind, something to push myself towards. But then went to hospital, kind of like, obviously when you go to an NHS waiting room, you kind of waiting around and stuff like that, and then end up having to stay in overnight, and then that overnight turned into like staying in for like 5 days. And at this point, it was like, okay, so that fight's off, and that's when I found out I had what I had basically.
So that fight was booked then. The Brown
fight was booked. I mean, I was like 3 weeks out from the fight because I'd been doing this. I'd been training already for like a month and a half.
Right. Okay. All right. What hospital did you go to?
I can't remember. So it would have been West London, because we were up in West London at the time.
That's why
Park, so yeah.
I'm from West London, so I don't know why. I just wanted to know whether I knew.
So I don't know whatever one's nearest Park Royal train train station. So we used to be in the Hooks London Supervised one. So yeah, it was just
probably Hammersmith.
Just strange. Just strange time it was. We stuck up in London like that.
Oh man! All right, so I don't want to go through every single one of your fights, but one thing that I do want to talk to you about is the fight against Pascal Cruz, and I'm not going to lie to you, I don't remember this fight. I don't have a recollection of it, but the reason why I want to talk to you about it is the main event. The main event was Nate Diaz against Jim Miller, and that's a fight I do remember. So, but I don't remember you being on the
I was on the prelims, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So
okay, and I also do remember this card because of the Alan Belcher and Husamar Polaris fight, because that
my god, that fight for me stole the show. I mean, the Miller Nate fight was amazing, but then obviously you watch all these fights backstage to see Belcher do what he did. Like he got himself in the worst position you possibly get against someone like Polaris. But he meant to do it. Yeah, he knew what he was doing. He'd had enough people on his legs during training camp. Yeah. And he was just turning his knee the right way, stopping all of it. And then, you get to that point, I think, where they were like, I wouldn't even know the times, but say like 3 minutes in, and all of a sudden, like, Polaris just dropped down a little bit, and the belt just started laying some ground and pound on him. And I mean, what a fight that one was. Yeah. I mean, the Nate fight, Miller fight was fantastic, but that one stole the show for me, just because he couldn't have been in a worse position. For like 2 minutes. It felt like 2 minutes anyway.
Yeah. And you fight someone that's a specialist the way Polaris is, and you it's almost like you have a game plan to avoid getting in that position.
Yeah, you just completely avoid the legs.
Yeah, right? He just invited it on him, and he was so confident that I can't remember who he had been training with, but I remember Joe Rogan or whoever that was.
I would say it's got to be Dean Lister or someone like that for legs.
But the help, and he's just been that's all he's done all camp, and he's supremely confident, and he showed it, man. That was, and also he's got that tattoo, hasn't he? Of I don't know who it's.
I think it's Johnny Cash, isn't it, or someone?
Yeah, where it looks like the bloody the North Korean guy, isn't it? But
I don't know. Alan Belcher was such a good fighter, man. He was always enjoyable to watch compete.
Yeah, I think he fought Bisping as well, didn't he? I think Bisping beat him.
I think so.
I remember them two kind of going at it.
And Bisping's been through so many good people. Do you know what I mean? In the middleweight division.
I'll tell you a story about Bisping. I remember. Do you remember when he fought Anderson Silva in the UK? Right.
Yeah.
I used to work in London Bridge at the time. So I don't know if you know the area very well, but do you know where the mayor's office is in London Bridge? I mean, not a lot.
I don't actually know.
Right. So the mayor's office is this really nice kind of oval building that looks over the Thames, right? And I remember sitting in the office, and my office was literally a 2-minute walk from there. And I go on Instagram, and I was in a meeting, right? And there's a picture of Anderson Silva and Bisping squaring off in front of each other, right in front of that building. And I'm sitting in a meeting, and I can see through the window, and like I can just go there, and I'll be there in like under 3 or 4 minutes. But I'm with a customer. I can't get out of the meeting, man. And I remember when the meeting finished, I ran over them. There's no one, not a single camera, not a single. It was I felt so sad, man.
I bet. As in meeting both of them, that would have been epic. I mean, obviously, I've never actually, I have met Anderson actually when we were in Seattle. I think Nogueira was fighting. I don't think he fought that night, but Lil Nog was fighting, so I kind of met him through that. But I mean, Bisping's a great guy. I've met him a couple of times.
Bisping, he's a bloke that's really like, I mean, I've always been a fan of Bisping's like since day one,
Right.
but I feel like ever since he's retired and he's stopped having to talk shit about people, like people just love him so much more because he's just like such a funny, kind of jovial, just an all-round nice guy. But that wasn't the person, that was the fighter, if that makes it. Like you didn't really show that side of himself too much.
I think definitely the fight that definitely won me over to Mike was his fight with Rashad Evans. And Rashad at the time was an absolute killer and a great fight. And Mike took him the distance and was just a handful everywhere. You know, every time Rashad got a takedown, Mike was hustling, hitting the fence, getting back up. And just it really, that was the fight that kind of made him feel like, you know, he's at that kind of level.
Yeah, and he wasn't a light heavyweight, was he? Do you know what I mean? It was
no, he wasn't a light heavyweight. So
yeah,
and Rashad I think just come down from heavyweight or something as well. So I mean, it was that.
Yeah. So any kind of just share with me any kind of fond memories or funny memories from fighting in the UFC with fighters that, obviously if it's not, you know, nothing too personal or whatever, but just stuff that you remember of, you know, that era of being a fighter and just interacting with these.
I think I guess a funny story is obviously I'd always take normally a buddy to the fight building up to the weekend in the fight, and I took my friend Jack McGee, my good friend of mine who was my first coach, and he was obviously you generally fighters are pretty boring in that last week. You know, I'm cutting weight, kind of just dragging time and waiting to kind of get weighed in and get fighting. And he was like, oh, I'm just going to go out, probably have a little drink or something, and I'll be back not too late. And I was like, yeah, go for it. And he went out and there was,
sorry, what card?
I want to say it might have been the John Maguire one. Well, no, not the John Maguire. Maybe in Paul Taylor actually.
But that was in the UK.
So I fought a couple of British guys. So it was in the UK, and my friend went out basically, and he ended up having a wrestling match like in the hallway with there was always a Russian fight called the janitor. I can't remember actually his name. Would have been Vladimir or something, but he was a light heavyweight dude, real strong. But yeah, they just ended up having like a wrestling match like in the middle of the hallway, which kind of like woke up most of the people on that floor in the hotel. And I remember him just getting back, just being like, been on like a mad night out with the janitor. I want to say his name was Vladimir or something, but
was he fighting on the card? He weren't fighting, was he?
No, he wasn't fighting. He was also cornering someone, but he was a UFC fighter at the time.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, great guy. I can't think he might have fought Trent Jones as well before. I mean, he fought pretty much everyone around at that time.
Or was he the light heavyweight that, I mean, he wasn't in the best kind of physics. He didn't look
no. He was just a strong bear of a man, basically.
Yeah. Kind of dark hair.
Right. But yeah, I would say that was Vladimir, but I have to check it out. But it's been quite a few years since I remember that one.
I think I know. I think I remember who you're on about, but I can't put my finger on the name. So obviously your final fight, we've discussed that. Obviously in the UFC, it ended kind of in a difficult way for yourself. So it must have been difficult, struggling with the health problems that you were struggling with, and then obviously, you know, a defeat ending, you know, the fight ending the way it ended. So take me back to that moment. You know, you've picked yourself up off the canvas. How are you feeling kind of around that time, the next day, that same night? Like, what are you going through mentally and emotionally?
I mean, my first memory of that fight is actually kind of backstage. I don't remember getting up in the ring and then kind of leaving the ring or anything like that. Just remember being backstage with first memory as a doctor being over me, kind of like stitching up my cheek and my ear. So I tore my ear as well for that one. And yeah, just being like, oh, so like I guess I lost then. I think were my first words of what I remember being like, oh, you know, that sucks and stuff. But yeah, I took a little bit of time off and then started again just trying to get back into training, trying to help some of the guys out at Shoot Fighters. So, but I mean, yeah, it sucks. Losing always sucks. There's no good way, especially when you lose by a kind of KO, you know.
Yeah, but so I get the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, you had aspirations to be a champion, and that was your long term, you know, overall your long term goal. But what really kind of drove you and motivated you was just the day to day improving and kind of being part of that team day to day. That is kind of what really drove you in the short term. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you're training that much, you do all become like a family, you know, and it's just something you see the same guys every day, and you're all going through it. So I
Mm.
mean, there's some. I mean, at that time, I was training with a guy called Marvin Vittori. Obviously, he's doing incredibly well now.
Yeah, yeah, he
So
was
we were
here as
kind of
well.
like
Yeah,
always training together, and he was a great guy to compete with.
yeah,
Super
yeah.
strong and always wanting to win again. He always had that competitive drive.
Yeah, you know, actually, you know, you did an interview with Fighting Talk 2 recently, and
Yeah,
Connor. So it's I'll tell you this story. In December, I went to get my hair cut, and Connor was there, and that was the first. So we just started talking about MMA, right? And that's how we got to know each other. And our barber, he also has trained at London Shoot Fighters and stuff like that. And he was telling me about Marvin
nice.
Vittori. And at that time, I didn't realize he was like actually Italian. I thought he was one of these Americans that have just Italian roots. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I
No,
thought.
no, he's full Italian,
Yeah. And then I actually
full
watched an
Italian. He
interview of
is.
his. And I was like, bloody hell, I didn't realize he was an actual Italian. I thought he was one of these, like, you know, Tony Soprano Italians.
Yeah, I mean, he speaks better Italian than he speaks English, but yeah, he's speaking English pretty good. But I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
we had a great gym at the time. You know, we had me, him, Mike Shipman,
Mm.
Norbert's now coming up, although Norbert's still quite young there. Michael Page, stuff like that. So it was a solid gym. London Shoot's always had the best kind of guys in the UK and the best coaches. So
Mm, mm. Yeah, because it always filled me with pride seeing fighters from, you know, when they say fighting out of London Shoot Fighters, being from London and obviously here, I was always like, oh, if you're fighting for London, if you're fighting from London Shoot Fighters, I'm automatically gonna want you to win the fight, sort of thing. So, so
I guess the local one, especially to you as well, West
yeah,
London
West
ways.
London, yeah, exactly, yeah. Like Park Royal was actually the first time I went cinema. I was in Park Royal to watch Toy Story 1. So
It's good
that,
cinema as well. I
yeah,
mean, that was the thing. The gym was just right next to the cinema.
yeah.
There's like a Nando's
And
across the
those
road. It kind of had everything
Chiquitos,
around it there,
KFC if you want a cheat meal.
right? Right.
Yeah,
So it's a real cool place to have a gym.
yeah. So let's just what are you kind of focusing on now? Then you mentioned that you are you know, you've started to train again, and you physically you feel kind of I don't want to put words in your mouth, but probably the best you felt in a number of years, I'd assume, now that
Yeah,
you've leveled out a little bit. So what is your, and you're only 33, I believe.
33. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, you know, you're still young, sort of thing. So what are your kind of plans moving forward? Do you have aspirations to get back in there?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to compete again. I definitely feel like it's not finished for me, or it's unfinished kind of business, and getting back in there and definitely giving it another go. I mean, at the moment, obviously, we run a gym which is closed, but when they open back up, I'll be kind of like really getting back into doing classes and kind of teaching and getting some of the other guys. I mean, we've only had one amateur fighter. We've been open now in like two years or whatever, and had one guy fight and win in his
Mm.
first amateur fight. So it's all good. We had a couple of people compete in grappling competitions. So it's just kind of getting the stable up, I guess, of competitors at the gym.
So let me ask you a question, actually, because I've heard Dan Hardy say this, that when he stopped fighting and he had to focus on just analyzing and kind of being an analyst or pundit, whatever you want to call it, he kind of found a different appreciation for how he'd kind of go about training, you know, if he was to do it again, sort of thing. So how do you feel now, looking back on how you trained and kind of what the daily grind was like? Do you feel like you'd want to make adjustments, or do you feel like you know, you had it right?
I mean, we always had it pretty right at London Shoot. I mean, you're always kind of learning your own body, and you're always going to be trying to train, I guess, slightly smarter or slightly better each time. But having that, you just got to go in and do your best, and you almost don't want to be in charge of your own training too much anyway, because you're always going to be able to cut corners that way. So you need someone to kind of manage how and what you're going to be doing during your training sessions.
Mm, mm. And do you have any fights left on your Do you still have a UFC contract, or where are you with that?
Yeah, I'm still on the contract. I can't actually remember how many fights I've got left, but I mean, I still get drug tested, so I'm been drug
Bloody
tested this
hell.
whole time, so I'm still clean.
You still get your SADA tested?
Yeah,
Fucking hell. So even when you was going through all them different medications and stuff like that, obviously you'd have told them about it all. But
yeah. You just disclose what you're on and stuff like that, and they test you.
uh, what's your weirdest testing story? Like, have they knocked on your door at 5 a.m. and you just can't go for a piss or something, something like that?
Generally, I mean, lucky because they wake you up. They normally come around about 6 o'clock in the
Mm.
morning, so they wake you up. So I mean that's not such a bad thing because you need a pee straight away. I mean the last guy was last month, so it was in January. I've had one in December and I had one in January. And the January guy, I think I just got back home, just been for a pee, and then he knocks on the door, and you're like, I couldn't pee, so the poor guy had to be here for like an hour. Well, I drank lots of water so I could pee for him and stuff.
Even during these times of social distancing, you came inside and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay. All right.
I mean, I invite him in, so
yeah.
I
That's
never had a
funny.
problem with any of them. I invite them in. If they want to drink, I can make them a drink whatever they want, really.
Is it has it been the same guy like more than once? Like, do you get to know him? Like, all right, John,
No,
back for some more.
probably like 3-4 years ago, I had like the same guy probably like 3-4 times in a row. I think one of the ones what made me laugh the most was because obviously it's technically not USADA testing us. It's an outside English company that does the testing on behalf of USADA.
Mm.
And for the first, say it's been like 7 years I've been getting tested while I haven't been competing. For the first half of it, it was one company and they did everything digitally via iPad.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I had a random one where it was a different company doing it and they did everything paper-wise. And I said to them, it was the first time these guys done it. I was like, oh, like, you guys always use iPads? And they're like, no, we've never used iPads. We always use like paperwork. And I was just thinking, like, who's been taking my urine then? Like, I've no idea. And the other guys, you don't do it digitally. Like, who has been taking my stuff, basically? So I mean, to be fair, they always, they flash their ID and stuff like that. But at this point, again, normally sometimes at 6 in the morning, you're just like, yeah. Just come in, let's get this done, as quick as I kind of can, really. So always just madness, though. Like I said, they've always been good to me. Like one time I was literally just down the road and he gave me a call. I was like, where are you? I was like, just out, like I'll be back in like 10 minutes. And it's only the moment you meet them that they can't leave your side and stuff. But they've always been good, all the testers.
So how often do you have to fill in your whereabouts? Like how often do you have to fill that in a week?
Quarterly. So it's every 4 months it is.
So how do you know? Like, so I don't know where I'm going to be. Kind of, I don't know. Next 4 months, June 13th.
You don't. You give your best, the best what you can be, basically.
Mm.
I think I've never been able to give them a proper minute by minute thing. I mean, they even say like, there's an app for it, and like they're like, oh, if you're going out, obviously put it on there, and you're like, you just can't. You can't live like that, really. I've always never been able to live like that. But I said I've never had any trouble with them. I always let them know as best I can where I am, if I'm taking any supplements or anything like that. But I mean, I've never had any problems, never tested positive, had lots of tests, it seems. So
yeah. So if you in an ideal world, if you ramp up your training and whatnot, do you have like a time scale in mind of when you might want to get back in there and fight again?
I mean, lockdown, depending on what I think, if I can get everything going right this year, I'd love it by the end of the year or something.
So that's a genuine goal that you're trying to work towards.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether I do compete or not at the end of this year, I want to be in a position where I'd be able to, like my body and be in shape and be competing with people who are at a good enough level that it warrants it,
So does that mean you'll be coming back to London Shoot Fighters to train here, or you're just going to?
Yeah, no, I was a little while ago. I haven't actually done it during this last lockdown, but I was trying to get out there as much as I can when they were properly open, stuff in between lockdowns. Right. I've been going down to my local amateur boxing club, which has managed to stay open during this as well. So I've been getting kind of like some boxing in during this time, and I'll go over to 10th Planet London when that opens up as well, and try to get going as much as I can.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, mate. I'm glad to hear that. So, are you in contact with the UFC at all? Do they get updates on your health, or what were they like during this period?
I mean, they've been good as gold. They haven't really contacted me. I think they're just on the back burner of waiting for me to kind of get in contact, to get back into, I guess, shape. Obviously, I've let them know that I was in a bad way and had to have surgery and stuff like that. But other than that, they've just kind of let me do my thing and recover, really, and get back into a position where I can do something.
Fair enough. So do you? I mean, I think I already know what the answer to this is, but do you have an opponent in mind if you were to fight at the end of the year? Do you have someone that you think, you know what? I think.
No, I mean, I've never picked an opponent. I'd fight whoever they want me to fight, whoever kind of will match up well for, or be a good fight for it.
Fair enough. And then let's just, I've taken a lot of your time, and I'm really grateful for you to join me for this conversation. So just quickly, what are you looking forward to in the current kind of climate of the sport? Like who do you like? What fighters do you look out for? Who do you enjoy watching? What gets you going?
I mean, all of them, all the good fights. You know, I enjoyed Masvidal when he was fighting. Obviously, the Usman Burns fight was amazing the other night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Edgar fight was good, although I always feel bad for it. I like Edgar a lot. His style was great. It was just a great knee that kind of caught him. So I mean, yeah, I just enjoy watching all of them. Obviously, we've got a shoot fight guy, Amir, is fighting at the moment. He fights at UFC. He's had some great fights.
Yeah.
He's had two great fights. So it was that one of the ones where his first fight was just perfection as well. And that last fight as well was pretty much perfection. It was great, super tough dude he was fighting.
Yeah.
Marvin Vettori, obviously, I love watching Marvin fight.
Oh, he's got Till next, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got Till next. It's gonna be a great fight. I mean, his last fight was fantastic. Even when you look at his Israel fight, back his Israel fight, it was a great fight he had with Israel. Probably one of Israel's
the closest,
most competitive fights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he came the closest, did Marvin. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, look, I'd love for you to join me again, and we can kind of talk about, after an event or something like that, we can just break it down and have a discussion about what kind of went down and your thoughts about fights and stuff like that, kind of more currently.
Definitely.
But I really enjoyed this conversation with you, man. I genuinely have been sat here and I've spent, and I'm not even exaggerating, hours over the last few years thinking, what the fuck is going on with John Hathaway? I wish someone would interview him, and now I'm doing it for, like, if no one else is going to do it, you got to do it yourself, right? So
it's perfect, eh?
Thank you so much for joining me, and
absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Best of luck with everything, and hopefully by the end of the year, I'll be talking to you again after you've won your return fight with the UFC. How about that?
Definitely, be great.
Good stuff. All right, mate. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us. Again, please, if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, hit like, share with a friend, and all of that good stuff. And like I said at the beginning of the video, all the links for the podcast platform, audio only version of this are down below. So please feel free to click on one of them. Thank you for your time. Cheers. Bye.